Good morning, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the May 2022 Committee on Accreditation meeting. Will the staff please call the roll?
Cynthia Almos, Jamaline Belatayo, Kathy Kreisha,
Here.
Katrina Chakowski, Cheryl Forbes, Bob Fraley,
Here.
Mike Hillis, Lynn Larson, Marty Martinez, Jason Lee,
Here.
Gerard Morrison,
Yeah.
Kevin Taylor.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll get started right away with item 24. Item 24 is a report of the accreditation team to Compton Unified School District. Consultant Karen Sacramento will introduce the item. She is joined by team lead Julie Sheldon and institutional representatives Mario Marcos, Executive Director of Educational Services, Dr. Menluvi Ramos, Administrative Educational Services, and Jose Ramirez, Induction Mentor. Are there any recusals? All right, seeing none, Ms. Sacramento, will you please begin?
All right, does that work? All right, a lot of practice. Yep, it is. I'm all good. Got the green light. All right. Good morning, COA members. It is definitely a pleasure to be here in person to present this item. As the state consultant to the visit, I am delighted to share the report from the Compton Unified School District Teacher Induction Program site visit, which was held on March 7th to 9th. And like all visits during this time, was done as a virtual site visit. The protocols for this visit were all in accordance with the normal procedures and took into consideration all the additional supports needed for the Zoom-based format. And it went very smoothly. I'd like to say thank you to Compton Unified School District representatives for all the work that was done in this regard. Before and during, for being so proactive and so positive to work with all along the way. We worked many months together during the visit, and I would say that it was truly a highlight to meet with them monthly during the preparation time. I would like to acknowledge the tremendous program leadership. The team is led by Dr. Menluvi Ramos, with support by Jose Ramirez and under the leadership of Mario Marcos. This is an amazing group of leaders and educators, and their commitment to the teachers and to the students of Compton is inspiring. Julie will speak more to this, but I will just say that I've never been more encouraged and impressed by a team offering support and mentoring to our newest teachers. And I've done this a long time. I would like also to acknowledge the extremely hard work and continual professionalism of the site visit team members, Gita and Jessica, as well as the team lead, Julie. Julie Sheldon's deep knowledge of accreditation and induction and new teacher support and mentoring, combined with her wisdom and her compassion and understanding, is really remarkable for us to have within our accreditation system, and it's just a joy to work with her. Her leadership on this visit was exemplary. And I will now turn it over to Julie to report on the findings and the visit.
I hate to say this, but Julie, you're muted.
Yeah, I realized too late. I do want to echo what Karen said. I'll get into more detail about this visit, but I do want to thank Dr. Brawley, Mario Marcos, and of course, Dr. Menluvi Ramos for their generosity of time in meeting with the team at all points, both prior and during the visit. I don't think I have ever had a visit where so many district team members met with us as part of the visit. And that really speaks to the community that Compton USD has created and Induction's part in that community and their dedication to the program. I especially want to thank Dr. Ramos because she brings such hard work and heart to everything she does, and she brought it to this visit. Anything the team needed, we had it immediately. And I do want to also thank Jessica Katrin Chai, Gita Stowe for their professionalism, their diligence, and their hard work examining many pieces of evidence. Thank you, Min Luby, for that. We had more than enough to be able to get a clear picture of this program, and also for their positive intentionality to truly learn about all aspects of this program. And of course, Karen Sacramento for her guidance and her leadership. She brings such wisdom and kindness to every site visit, and we all learn so much from her, both the team and the programs. So our visit started out with a video from Compton USD, and it showed the different sites welcoming students and all of the amazing things that the district is doing. And at first I didn't completely understand how that tied into the induction program, but over the span of the visit, we understood much more about how this district has created a community of educators, parents, and learners. They are dedicated to being the best they can be and for giving students the very best education. And it was very clear that induction was embedded in this community and supported at all levels. One of the highlights of the visit was seeing how much professional development was offered across the district. And that was embedded in the induction program, as this professional development was tied to the candidates' ILP goals and their needs, which was due to the communication, the constant communication that Menluvi keeps up at all levels of the district. They work so hard in the district to make sure that they're giving their students the very best education that they can, and that they value their induction program. Another thing that stood out was the mentorship. Many of the candidates during the interviews spoke about the value of the mentorship, and the mentors themselves spoke about how supported they were in the program. They were given buddy mentors to work with, to peer review for each other, and to give each other support. So there was support in the program at all levels. And another thing that really stood out was every single person that we interviewed spoke warmly about Menluvi and the work that she does. I don't know when she sleeps, because she is constantly communicating with everyone in the district. And for that reason, induction is so strong and is such a vital part of the Compton Unified School District's community of support. So I could go on all day about this wonderful program. I echo all of Karen's comments. It was truly a joy to review this program and to see the amazing work that they're doing. So the team has recommended, or that's found all standards to be met, and are recommending full accreditation for the Compton Unified School District Induction Program. And I welcome any questions that you have.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, Michelle, for the uplifting report. Very much appreciated. We now invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you it's not a time to dispute the team's report, but rather provide any thoughts that you may have about the visit itself. Did you hear? So, institutional representatives, can you hear us at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Hi,
I don't know. Hi. Did you hear my introduction? This is a chance for you to go ahead and say a few comments if you wish about the report.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
About the
Good
visit,
morning.
excuse me, about the visit.
Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Mario
Good morning.
Marcos, and I am the Executive Director of Educational Services for Compton Unified School District with a focus on our secondary schools, but I've also been working with our elementary schools for many years. I've been in Compton for 23 years. First of all, I would like to thank the Commission on Accreditation for the opportunity to attend this session. On behalf of our Board of Trustees for Compton Unified, our Superintendent, Dr. Darren Brawley, and the many of us involved in induction, I would like to emphasize how honored we feel for the recommendation for accreditation of our induction program. I would like to thank the visiting team, and in particular, Karen Sacramento and Julie Sheldon. Thank you for your guidance, and thank you for your support through the process, in preparation and through the process. So for many of us, it was the first time going through the accreditation process, and we found it very revealing. It helped us reflect on our practices, and it came to truly validate the important work that all of us in our district do in support of our novice teachers to guarantee that they develop the best teaching practices aligned to the CSTPs, but also they become as effective as possible to meet the needs of our students. So from our Board of Trustees and Superintendent Dr. Brawley to our Human Resources Department, Business Services, Educational Services, Site Leadership, the Advisory Committee, and of course, our wonderful and phenomenal mentors. All of us have made this journey possible and successful. But in particular, I have no words to express my enormous gratitude to our induction administrator, Dr. Menlubi Ramos. Dr. Ramos, we all know you're exceptional. So to such extent, we have been inspired that we are now in the process of planning for the development of our induction program for administrators. And I know that we will also be successful with this endeavor. So thank you again to the Commission for the work that you do and for raising the bar so that we have the best teachers for our students. They deserve nothing but the best. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Marcos. Appreciate that. Any other member of the institution wish to offer any comments?
Yes, thank you. I am Menlubi Ramos, the Compton's Administrator of Teacher Induction Program. First of all, I would like to thank the Office of the CCTC for assigning Karen Sacramento as our CUSD consultant. Karen has been instrumental to our success, meeting with our team several times to guide us through the process, answering all my emails that were full of questions and clarifications. She even willingly shared with me her cell phone number for emergency contact. Then there's the wonderful site visit team led by Julie Sheldon. Julie and her team made the CUSD team very comfortable during the interview sessions. The site visit team was very flexible and accommodating, which made the event fluid and memorable for all of us. It was my first site visit experience as a program leader for 6 years, and the experience taught me a lot. It was a very humbling experience. Thank you for validating everything we do for the success of our induction candidates and that of our rigorous mentoring system. The support from the Compton Board of Trustees, our Superintendent, Dr. Darren Brawley, my direct supervisor, Mr. Mario Marcos, our Executive Director of Educational Services, I cannot thank you enough, Mr. Marcos, our lead mentors, advisory committee, site principals, made everything possible for the smooth and efficient daily operation of our program. Again, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Ramirez, do you wish to offer any comment? I see you there with us.
I'll make it short and brief, but I want to thank Julie Shelton, Karen Sacramento, and Menlubi and Mr. Marcos for bringing me on board as a mentor. One of the things I would say as new to the CTC and supporting and the program and everything for the induction, a lot of things I learned and made me more aware of what it takes and how we can support our teachers. I do the PDs with my other partners, but also made me, I guess, want to do better and grow and think about what can we do to help our teachers and be more successful as everything changes, especially through the pandemic and so on. So in other words, it validated what we're doing and encouraged me to continue supporting, but also growing as a teacher and helping our teachers grow to be successful. And thank you once
Yeah,
again.
thank you for your input. We appreciate that. It's wonderful to hear your perspective on things. All right, opportunity for questions or comments from any committee member. Member Tchaikovsky.
Well, it's been said 100 times, but you people are inspiring as a team of individuals who clearly are invested, not only in your relationships and success of your program, but in how it directly connects to kids. I can just see you all in classrooms for some reason. There's a relationship between how you interact with each other and how you represent your district in terms of the future of your district, and how those teachers that you serve will relay that sense of possibility, hope, and love to their own students. So thank you for everything you do. It's very encouraging to hear what you're doing.
Thank you, Member Tchaikovsky. Anyone else wish to offer comment or thought? Question? Yeah, Member Taylor.
I was encouraged to read in the report the focus on supporting teachers outside of the classroom as well. And it's so important in those induction years to acknowledge the humanness, the difficulty, the challenge involved. It's not just professional. It's learning to balance all of that and continue to be a balanced human being during that time. So thank you for going the extra mile for those teachers.
Thanks, Member Taylor. Any other committee member have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, this is an action item. Is there a motion? Member Forbes.
I move that we accept the team's recommendation of accreditation for the Compton Unified School District.
So moved. Is there a second? Second by Member Hillis. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Congratulations on the outstanding report and the outstanding progress and work that you do there at Compton. So
Thank you.
we look forward to hearing great things in the future, of course. So thank you, Mr. Marcos, Dr. Ramos, Mr. Ramirez, Ms. Sheldon, and thank you, Ms. Sacramento. Great. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Have a great day. So item 25 is the discussion of Accreditation Handbook, Chapter 8. Administrator Cheryl Hickey will introduce the item. Ms. Hickey, will you please begin?
Of course. Yes, so this is Accreditation Handbook Chapter 8, and unlike the other chapters we brought to you, we're bringing them to you without any changes at the moment, because in talking with our two co-chairs, I was mentioning that, this is probably one of the most important chapters in the entire handbook. And I was frankly just having trouble finding a couple of hours to really focus on it because it's so important. And they both said, maybe it's a good idea if we don't present any changes at this meeting and let's talk about it before you start digging in. And I thought that was a great idea. So the other piece as we think about this is that if anything is going to go in regulations, I think this might be the chapter or parts of the chapter that would go in regulations. What does it mean? What's the definition of accreditation, or accreditation with stipulations, accreditation with major stipulations, those kinds of things. So as you think about it, keep that in mind. But I thought we could maybe walk through it, and any ideas you have, I could bring it back at the June meeting with your suggested changes and any changes from the staff, because I think consultants would have some good ideas as well here. So we just have not had the opportunity to do that. But this is a really important chapter. So would love to hear your thoughts. It's pretty straightforward. It talks about the decision options, and obviously we don't want, I shouldn't say obviously, I don't think there's a lot of, I think the current accreditation recommendations are working. You may have other ideas, but the accreditation with stipulations, major, probationary, and denial seem to be very clear and workable. It may be the words around all of that may be problematic or may need some improvement. The requirements that are on page 3, the table, I think that would be really good to walk through each of those and make sure we're not missing anything that we might have changed our approach over the years since 2016 when this was adopted. So we might want to walk through that. The sections for each of the definitions on the various levels of accreditation start with a general paragraph. Then they have operational implications where, given that finding or given that status, it means the institution must do something, and then you may do something or may require something. So it gives you the must and the may, and I think we need to talk a little bit about those and make sure that those are okay. One of the areas that I think is really interesting as I read it again with fresh eyes, from top to bottom, is that when we talk about removing stipulations, so it's interesting because when I first started, Larry Birch, those of you who knew Larry Birch back in the day, he was our professional services division. He was our David DeGear of professional services division. And he used to tell us all the time that an institution does not have to meet all standards in a revisit or a second. They need to address all stipulations. And that does not always translate into every standard being met. So it's interesting as I read it again here that we use the language to respond to all concern and all stipulations, but we don't say all standards. So that just might be something we think about as we talk about it, because I think we have kind of moved to when there is a list of stipulations, we're really addressing all the standards that have been identified as problematic. But that just might be something to think about. And I think that's probably all I need to say. And then we can just begin jumping in. There's, of course, the charts that we use, the one on page 14 that we use all the time, which we always have struggles with because it doesn't reflect the program findings. But this has been enormously helpful, I think, to both teams, team leads, new team leads, as we walk through it. And we just want to take a look at it and see if it still represents what we're thinking. So I'm just going to open it up for all of you to start digging in and sharing some thoughts.
Member Tchaikovsky.
Okay, so this is probably just a clarifying question here. I noticed one of the distinctions between must and may is the first thing that appears under may is continue the accredited program. And that makes me kind of a little confused because it seems to me that if a program has an accredited status, that is an indicator that district offers that support to people. So if they choose not to implement, for example, induction, let's say you have an accredited program for induction and it's published that way, and for whatever reason, induction is not offered in that district, it seems like that could produce some consequences down the road. So I'm wondering why that may offer the program isn't in the must section. Because if they don't want to be accredited, they should become inactive.
Yeah, no, that's a good comment. And it's in the sentence that also has an and I think a lot of times we're focused on the second part of that sentence, which is and propose new credential programs. So that's a good comment. I hadn't really thought about that. Continue all accredited programs.
It's almost like, at any point in time, the program has a status. It's either live and accredited or it's inactive or it's terminated.
Right.
So you can't have it both ways. And I think about teachers who may be looking for places to work. They find out that a program has an accredited induction program that could influence their hiring decisions or their selection of a job site. And if they appeared in that district, which then did not offer induction for whatever strange reasons, and there are strange reasons, we're not doing a service to those teachers by leading them to think they're assured access to the state requirement. You know what I mean?
It's an interesting concept because we came up with inactive, I don't know how many years ago, a decade ago, because there were all these programs officially on our books that weren't actually being offered. And so we almost did, it took us a few years to kind of get things cleaned up. Once the COA decided we need this other status that says, okay, we're not sure what we're going to do with this program. So let's come up. So that's why we came up with the 5-year. You get 5 years to decide if it's an approved program, you're going to run it or you're going to withdraw it. And I think that's been really, really helpful, but that's a good point on that.
Well, along those lines, though, I would be reluctant as a program sponsor with multiple programs to feel that we must offer a program, because that is often beyond the scope of what we can do. So, we're in a situation like that with one of our programs out of several. And so the program isn't exactly inactive because there are candidates that are going to be taught out of that program and then possibly reopen. So we can't put it on inactive status because people are in the program, right?
So inactive status, and I guess it's not in this section, it's probably in a different section, is basically we've said you can teach out your candidates that you currently have. We have put a threshold of 15 candidates or less, because once you're in the 20s and 30s, you're really operating a program. So 15 candidates or less, and you are either teaching those candidates out, you're not accepting new candidates into the program. And then it's up to the institution, like I said, 5 years to figure out where's this program going, because there's a lot of reasons why an institution might not offer it. But you're right, we can't tell them that they have to offer it. But we could eliminate that and just stay silent on that part of the, if that's.
Or you could say something like, the accreditation status of a program is also accompanied by some indicator of its operationality. Like, I think a lot of the value of this labeling is for external audiences, people outside of us. So again, just thinking of experiences in my own district, if you have an accredited program, but it's not being offered, it should be inactive, but it's not always clear that it is. I mean, and again, maybe this is for a different part of this document, because I think it's incumbent on us to communicate the expectations that the state has for districts and LEAs to support their teachers. And so that has to be very clear what's being offered and what is not. Like, we can't say that something's on the books and then not allow people access to that.
Because putting a program inactive has consequences. And so then you have to go back and make it active again. So that can really, especially when you're working in an IHE with multiple application deadlines and other institutional permissions that are needed, it would be difficult to keep pivoting, as you're trying to like perhaps refine or revise a program. So for me, though, as a reviewer, what the weight of the sentence really isn't on continuing all accredited credential programs. It's on the last part of the sentence, proposing new programs, because if there's been stipulations, it may be a decision on the part of the COA that we would recommend, we would require that an institution not be able to propose new programs, because that really addresses the capacity. I mean, I agree it should be clear if a program is active or inactive, but I don't know if this is the place where that really goes. And I think it would cause some pause for thought among IHEs who may already be reluctant to offer programs to, and I'll just speak for IHEs, not districts, to then say you must continue to offer the program.
Right. And so if we struck the first part of that sentence and then dealt with the inactive issue in wherever that shows up, I can't remember what chapter that's in, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I would favor that. And again, just the context for my concern about that is, like, in a school district, like what happened in mine, we had a budget shortfall. And so unilaterally, these weird decisions were made to amend collective bargaining unit agreements that related to induction, that said things like, there will be no induction if there's layoffs of new teachers. And that was collectively bargained, and it ended up in a contract. So the district acknowledged that obligation to not offer induction in lieu of our CTC accreditation status. And it left all these teachers in the lurch. There was no designated funding. And now the teachers union said, well, it says right here, and it was all politically bargained because it was an attempt to get people to do certain things. But what happened is that new teachers had to scramble. So we want to, I think part of this language and the regulations that accompany it can be used by teachers to defend their right to these services, so that things like what happened in my district will not interfere with that. And district leaders need to recognize they have kind of first an obligation to the state, I think, and second an obligation to collective bargaining. And they need to collectively bargain aware of those requirements. So, it's easy to, we have schools, we have districts like Compton, where clearly there's a district-wide commitment to this mission, but that's not the case throughout the state. Induction can be easily chopped if necessary. So I don't know how all those comments serve this. I'm just thinking of how people might eventually use this language and the resulting regulations that you create accordingly.
Well, and one of the things that comes to mind, and Aaron, you can help me think about this, is that one of the aspects of accreditation is initial program approval and initial institutional approval. So when institutions submit for the very first time, we have them tell us, what their teach out plan is. And it feels odd because they're proposing a program, but we're making them think about what happens if it closes. But it feels like that might be another place where we put, if you plan to not offer this program, we need to know, what. So maybe there's some changes we need to make there as well. So, okay.
Yeah, Member Lee.
I would, just somebody who was a lead negotiator for a district for many years, I think that sometimes what the district has to do is collectively, good, bad, or otherwise, is the culture and prerogative of the district. When I was with San Jose City Schools and the recession hit, there were a lot of things that we used to do that we no longer could afford to do. And I was, in the process of trying to keep our teacher induction an active program without actually running the program in hopes of funding returning. So I wouldn't want the commission to get in the weeds of what districts have to do to meet the bottom line. I think the role of the commission is to make sure that obviously we can't just let things go, on forever without any, there's rules in place now that force institutions and districts to answer to what they're doing for their program. But we don't understand the political context nor the economic context of individual districts serving. And so we have to not try to, do things that are going to put them in difficult situations in their own culture where we have no understanding of what they're facing.
But we are one state, and we do have obligations to ensure that all the teachers in our state have equal access to the same services. So I don't want to get into big argument here, but
that's a discussion. It'd be great to have one state with one funding, with one collective bargain, with one salary schedule for everybody, that, so that we don't pit districts against each other fighting over crackers and crumbs, but that doesn't exist either.
Yeah, Member Morrison.
This is kind of backing up a bit, and maybe this is for somewhere else, and I don't really know what the answer to this is, but when we're looking at stipulations, I'm sometimes not confused, but a little troubled by this idea of standards being met with concerns. And I always think, well, either they're met or they're not met, right? And that conversation came up yesterday, a response from one of the organizations said, well, met with concerns is still met. And I was like, well, is it? Either it's met or it isn't. And if we're putting stipulations on an institution based on these concerns, and they're saying, well, we've met that standard, what are you talking about? And so I don't know what other classification it could be. My inclination is to just say it's not met. If it's met with concerns, then let's just say it's not met, and then we can base the stipulations on that, rather than putting stipulations based on something that they're saying, well, we've met that standard. So that's a question, not an answer. I don't know what the answer is.
And that's a very valid question. Yeah, Jason.
Some of you may know that my program itself went through a very difficult time as a result of accreditation. And in the spirit of continuous improvement, I think we need to allow the flexibility that exists, because it really is about all of this, in my opinion, is based on helping, not forcing, but helping institutions to reflect and continually evolve and continually improve. And so I think, somebody who was on the receiving end of a very serious accreditation report. I mean, I had people that have been into CTC for a long time say, well, we've never seen a program get something like that. And I'd only been in the job for 6 months. And so it was a great opportunity for us to reflect, and it's really had the desired impact on our programs and our program leads. And so I think the flexibility is important, because continuous improvement really is about, even if you meet all standards, what looks like meet to you may, MEET, not MEAT, may look different to me. And so as a result, that flexibility allows the deep conversations we've heard and to take place that are really about improving programs, serving teachers, and serving students.
How about Tchaikovsky?
So yeah, that makes me think about assessment in general, and the value of, now I'm not going to go off the deep end here, but the value of like a 4-point rubric. Okay, a 4-point rubric is a really much more valuable than a 5-point rubric, right? Because you don't like default to the mean. And a 4-point rubric, when applied to anything, offers an opportunity to differentiate, again, going back to the old bits of box, right? Good enough and not good enough, right? That's your first sorting vehicle. And then there's exemplary and just good enough, or very good and just good enough. And then we've got almost good enough and really far from good enough, right? So we've got these 4 different kind of gradients. And so I agree with Jason about, the flexibility there, but I also think the calibration issue will always loom large. I mean, we have these amazing consultants, but even you in your, attempts to be consistent, rely on, a common understanding, there is variance. We've seen them in how the reports are written. We're human beings, right? But the attempt then to determine how similar the evidence is useful for calibration, and it helps inform like the attributes and the culture of this organization and what the state of California is after. So I guess I would say, if anything, rather than just have good enough and not good enough, met, not met, which kind of leads to the checklist mentality that I think you attempted to get away from, although I don't disagree with Jerry at all. I totally, agree with you about being clear about what we expect. I'd almost think, in the spirit of continual improvement, maybe there's some districts that really did exemplarily. We're not calling out those in our rating system. You just have to be good enough. You don't have to be excellent. And we're focused on just being good enough. So what if there were a 4-point rating instead of a 3-point rating, which is really what we have now? We've got not met, met with concerns, and met. So what if there was a 4th one in there somehow that was exemplary or model worthy or something like that? Because we have, in this group, we have talked about putting together exemplars. And I will say, as a classroom teacher and as a coach of sports and as a coach of professional development, there's nothing more effective than a good model to communicate to people what your expectations are. So I don't know. I think that might be something to think about, is, expanding the number of rating, the type of feedback. And then, knowing that you've got programs like San Jose State, which is 15 different programs, but we might get something more out of that.
Thanks, Katrina. Cheryl?
Well, I recall one time substituting for our co-chairs to present the yearly COA report to the commission, and they were quite interested in that idea. It was a different chair, it was a different era, so it's definitely been discussed before, and I think there's a lot of merit to that idea. But that's my personal opinion. But on page 14, I was just looking at that table again, because and thinking of this conversation, because the language there is common standards less than fully met. So I think that was the attempt to avoid the dichotomy. To embrace the continuous improvement within the dichotomy of less than fully met, right? And then you tally them up, and there's sort of that sliding scale that is associated with the different accreditation recommendations. And as a team lead, I found this pretty helpful for helping to focus the discussion when we were making the recommendation. But as a COA member, I've found it a little more sometimes ambiguous or not necessarily as helpful in making the final recommendation or the final decision, not recommendation. So I was just curious what others thought about that particular chart. Page 14.
Member Hillis. Yeah, Mike.
So without getting to that chart yet, just a little context. I was previously involved in the state of Washington's accreditation system and was a state reviewer and did a lot of work with their standards board. We had exemplary notations on reports for a while. But what ended up happening is every team felt like they needed to find an exemplary attribute of programs. So then it just got so watered down that it became essentially not useful anymore. So what they did is they basically took that away and then they said exemplary practice, things to highlight should be in the report itself, as opposed to something official within that, calling it out. And so again, not saying that's right or wrong, just something to consider because it was tried and it didn't seem to be very successful.
If I can jump in, a couple of comments as I'm hearing people talking. If we do the met and not met, that is very similar to a pass, no pass, where I think there's value in it, but I think there's also, I think as I hear Katrina speak, there has to be some kind of variance in there, not only just because not all programs are going to be equally pass or no pass, but I think also this system is designed as a series of checks and balances. I mean, everybody's expertise is here, their experience is here, and they bring that to the process. So one of the reasons I believe that you have the review, and then you have the team, and then you have the COA, and then we can even comment on the team's report, and it ultimately goes to the commission. So I think the system is in place to allow for that, to give us opportunities to see things differently based upon the evidence provided and the data there, how we see that connect. So I think that aligns well. As I'm hearing, it's the question of is there something that we either want to expand some of the language or perhaps even reduce something to clarify it so that when we get to page 14, that doesn't quite become quite as, I guess, subjective. Is that what I'm hearing? And Aaron had a comment. I'm sorry to cut you. Go ahead, Aaron.
And thank you for this conversation. It's really fascinating. And it's something that Cheryl and I and all of our consultant staff talk about, at the end of every year. How did it go? What could we change? I just wanted to jump into the met with concerns and maybe put some context in there for what often happens, a reason for it. I'm not saying it's a reason to keep it, but a reason for it. The whole 7-year process gives programs an opportunity to be looking at themselves across 7 years, not just suddenly, the commission's coming, it's year 6. We better clean house. Not that anybody's doing that, but, and so sometimes what happens is in year 5, when institutions do program review or common standards review, part of that will bring things to the surface for them and they'll go, oh my gosh, you know what? We aren't doing this, or we could be doing this better. And the best institutions that have all the resources, they'll jump on it right now and immediately get something in place and get it rolling. But sometimes if they have, for instance, a fall site visit, right? So they've gotten their common standards review, maybe 6 months, they've gotten that feedback maybe 6 months before their visit. They've tried really hard to get some new structures in place and some new processes in place, but they're new. And so maybe what they've put in place meets the standard, but the team says, this is good, right? You're going to meet the standard with this, but you've just gotten it started. And so we really want to see, that's when you get like maybe a 7th year report or a stipulation that says this was met, but with concerns because the institution's just gotten this rolling and we would like the COA to continue to follow up with this institution about that. So that is one often a very common use for a met with concerns.
The other thing I'd say is that some of the standards are gigantic. Common standard 1 has, the kitchen sink in it, and it may be one piece of that is problematic or just being implemented or something. And so it gives the team something to hang their hat on and say, well, I acknowledge you do all of this other stuff, but this piece is a problem, or this piece.
Yeah, and I think consistent with all standards, there's always going to be not checking off all the boxes, but some institutions may be able to achieve the standards. While there's some commonality amongst them all that they must achieve a certain way, there are also some flexibility designed based upon the institution, how they want to provide that. So it's not one size fits. But rather there's, again, you have options of how to address the standard, how to meet the standard beyond the basic requirements. Yeah, Katrina?
Yeah, and I might, something that's not entirely clear to me, I mean, again, thinking about the chart on page 14, that's really focused on common standards, obviously, right? So something that I've been kind of struggling with is the relationship between those criteria on page 14 based on the common standards, and then decisions that are influenced by preconditions not being met. We had an example of that yesterday. And then I'm wondering about program standards, like where are those accounted for? Like, it seems like there's a huge emphasis on common standards, and I understand that because that's kind of like, all the programs are subject to those. And I understand the preconditions, but there's no chart for preconditions, right? There's only a chart for common standards, and there's no chart for program standards. So my question, I guess, is a question. That's like, why?
Well, I think, thinking about it from the perspective of working with a site visit team, when there's many programs that have issues, those should be bubbling up to the level of the common standards, and that's kind of how they are related, right? And like underneath it says that findings on program standards must be considered in making the accreditation recommendation. So it doesn't really feature within this chart in a quantitative way, but I think this level of deliberation about the accreditation decision usually happens at the level of the common standards. Because if you have an institution that's meeting all the common standards, but there's a program or maybe even 2 programs that are having a lot of problems, that's probably going to be a very different accreditation recommendation. Just, thinking about the consequences of those, and the stipulations would reside more at the program level. So, I think that would be how I'd look at it from the point of view of working with a site visit team. Again, here, making the accreditation decision, sometimes I find this a little more limiting.
Yeah.
And maybe even, I don't know if subjective is exactly the word, but sort of ambiguous. It's not always as helpful as it feels when you're out really at the site making these recommendations. Because this really is, it's the range of accreditation recommendations. It's really not decisions.
Yeah, good point.
Cheryl, then based on what you just said, what about preconditions?
So the preconditions, at least in the way that, in the BIR training, you think about those as being conducted by the staff. So the staff does those reviews because they have the necessary regulatory knowledge that is beyond what we're trained to do in the BIR. And so though there was a site that had problems with preconditions, that's obviously got to be a big red flag, which is how we talked about it in the streamlining and strengthening group when this accreditation system was streamlined and strengthened. And so those were designed to have, well, for example, the number of times that institutions submit the preconditions in the new system is more than it was in the past. It was just once in a 7-year cycle. Now it's twice. And so it provides an extra opportunity for early intervention if there are things that are actually like a matter of ed code or law, which are the preconditions, right?
I do think, just on that topic though, I think it's missing from here.
It is.
So, and I think part of that is because I think over the last since this was drafted and adopted, we have really started seeing the effects of the 2 years. And so I think there is a section we probably need to add back in here, or add in here. It wasn't
because like we made a decision yesterday that was driven by concern over preconditions. And I don't think
that's a good suggestion.
And then maybe something just, I don't know if there's a way to articulate the relationship among, I don't know if it's even for this document, but to even almost graphically like illustrate elsewhere in the handbook or something, someplace it doesn't get codified. I know like less is more, like that's the goal. You're like, please stop talking because regulations need to be minimalist. But, just like what Cheryl just articulated, that there's this like central thing of the common standards, and program standards all have these aspects to them. I think that might help programs make better use, and like organizations where they have like an assistant superintendent that's responsible for all these things, they would like understand, oh, this is how it all fits together.
I actually drew a picture like that for my chair and the dean so that they would understand. Well, I'm not a very good graphic artist at all. I can't even use Canva. Well, I can't even use Canva. You don't want to use mine, but I'm sure someone else could do that. And it was also really helpful to our credential analysts, even though they've been doing this for many years and they have a lot of expertise, but I think they weren't as familiar with why the preconditions are so important, what they really are and where they come from, right? It just seemed like all one big set of standards, to many of the people on our staff. And when we had an issue happening that I could see, this is a precondition, we've got to do something about this right now, then it would help to get that sense of urgency, which is what the picture sort of communicated, right?
Well, and there is another section where preconditions are mentioned, and I can't remember what chapter it is, but we had you must address it within 10 days comment. We need to rethink that because that has not been operationally feasible. And then we said, when does the clock tick after the team has identified it and we've determined, because it could be another couple months before you all see or do we wait till that has been a little herky jerky, and we need to clean that up somehow. We'll bring that to you in June.
Anybody else want to comment? And feel free, this is an open discussion. There's no need on me to formally call on you. We just want to have that. Unless there's a free for all and all hands go up then. But aside from that, let's just keep the conversation going. Anybody else?
Did we resolve or come to any kind of understanding of the program standards? Looking at that table on page 14, I mean, it really is all about the common standards. I mean, the fact that you could miss half the program standards and get accreditation with stipulations, which, as Gerald was alluding to yesterday, some of them were like, well, we got it, right? Yeah, and you missed half the program standards. I mean, that should not be allowed.
Right. From this point forward, everything will be formal.
Sorry. I need another cup of coffee.
No, your concerns are duly noted.
Yeah.
So I guess the question becomes is how does that be addressed? Or may that be addressed in the current system?
Well, I don't have. Oh, that's Cheryl. Go ahead. Yes,
Okay,
Cheryl. Cheryl's drawing. We need Cheryl's drawing.
No, but I mean, I think in this instance, that's also where the BIR training comes in and what the review teams discuss, because it depends on how, like, if one program, it may be operated in a completely different part of an IHE, for example, and so there's less control over some parts of how that program might be implemented. I'm thinking of, a previous discussion that we had. So obviously there's a stipulation in there somewhere, but would we want to go all the way to like probationary or denial, or, I mean, that's where that range, I think, really comes into it, based on like the number, because the other thing that's missing to me is like it treats all these numbers as if they're equal, and some of the common standards, quite frankly, have so much in them that they weigh more to me than so if you're missing a common standard of institutional infrastructure, and I think that's where it bubbled up to what we saw in the report that I think you may be mentioning, is it did bubble up to that common standard 1, which is a big one, right? And that's what got the attention in that case of the institutional leadership at the highest levels, which is what needed to happen. So I think I agree. I think it could be quantified and maybe even represented visually, although not by me, but that relationship. But ideally in the BIR training, you're already thinking about like what happens when there's all the programs have a whole bunch of issues. That's going to be a very different common standards set of findings than when you can see that there's a program that really needs serious attention. How do you embed that in the findings on the, where does that bubble up to in the common standards? Am I off base?
No, you're, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and you're not off base at all. And it just again, a couple of things that I'm thinking about while you're having this conversation. I would be surprised if a team was on a site visit and all of the programs had more than half of their standards not met. I would be surprised if the team didn't go for major stipulations.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that sliding bar there, but on the and if they didn't go for major stipulations and you as a COA body felt that would be more appropriate than just stipulations, you can absolutely say, no, I'm sorry, team, but we need to up this.
If they didn't meet half the stipulations, I'd be sitting here going for deny of accreditation, because in my mind, if you're not going to play the game seriously, you shouldn't be on the field. Because to me, if even in one program, right? So let's say hypothetically, San Francisco State had one program that didn't meet half the program standards. You've got to call Cindy Goodsick, on the carpet for that. Because she's letting something slip there. Now, this is hypothetical. We're talking about Cindy. It would never happen. But what you're essentially saying is, let's say, for the sake of argument, that was physical education, right? So it's okay to turn out crappy PE teachers, because they're turning out great bilingual educators, and they've got unbelievable science and math, and wow, their history is fantastic. Their English is, but they're PE, they're really certifiable, but we're going to let them go. It's the same kids that are going to get hurt, and gosh, in PE they could really get hurt. I mean.
Literally.
Well, I'm jumping in out of it.
Let's have Aaron, then Cheryl.
Okay, just as a reminder, the COA, and this change was made when I was still a consultant, so I wasn't even an administrator yet. The COA made a decision and sort of changed their processes a few years ago to allow them to shut down a single program within a unit.
Exactly. Yeah.
It used to be really problematic if one program out of 16 or 22 was doing poorly, and the COA would really grapple with, what do we do? We really want to just kind of hit that program hard.
Right.
So the COA changed its own processes to allow for closing down one program or giving a greater penalty, if you will, to a single program within a unit, just for this very reason.
That's actually what I was going to address, but that didn't actually happen, perhaps in the some of the reports that we've been seeing or thinking about lately. So I think it's a good catch to think about, because I'm not sure it's fair to the rest of the institution either, and all those other teachers that are being prepared in a time when we need teachers to penalize the entire institution rather than closing down one program or putting one program on probation or something like that. But the converse is also true. So we've seen some cases in which the team found all the standards to be met, but I don't know that the COA was in complete agreement, although it's not our role to change the finding on standards. But we did change the recommendation for accreditation and added some things to it that weren't there. So I think that relationship between the COA and the team findings is, hopefully spelled out in here more than I caught somehow, or maybe we could beef up that section.
And I think to follow up on that, I think this chart is guidance that isn't set in stone. And every time we come together, we talk about this. It's an opportunity to have this discussion that we have right here. And sometimes it's with a specific institution. So I think the there is flexibility within here on all levels, but again, we do have the opportunity to have the discussion like we're having here. And if the determination is made that differs from what the reports are the findings from the team report, then we can certainly go ahead, as we have done in the past, go ahead and offer some other options or make some other findings. So I think that does exist in there. Yeah. Katrina?
So revealing my ignorance. So if there is a part of this document that kind of supports the course of action that Kevin was just articulating in terms of one program that's problematic, where is that articulated that you can in fact call out that program?
Let's see. I don't know if it's this section or someplace else. Let's see.
Because
is it in that chart?
Because
I will look it up. I don't remember exactly, but this was a Linda Darling Hammond thing. She, when she was chair, she directed us, you need to find a way that we can shut down a single program with an institution. I remember having conversations with her on this. And so, and the COA was having the same conversation at the same time. So I was really relieved to be able to tell her the COA has acted to put that in place. I will find it. It's somewhere in the document. I just don't remember.
It sounds like it sounds like this current iteration of people would support that for the goal of providing equitable support and expectations for all programs, right? And so maybe that could even be footnoted for table 14 or something, while the general accreditation decision is predicated on the common standards, or something, individual programs may receive independent, something, denial or may be afforded a different status or something like that. I don't know.
On the chart on page 3, it's the last set of cells. If the stipulation is included that requires closure of a program, the institution must wait a minimum of 2 years. So we could fix that a little bit, play with that language there, but that was intended here that it must also be presented someplace else in a different chapter. But if that stipulation is included, then the institution cannot submit for another 2 years.
So stipulation then would mean, in this case, denial of accreditation for a program.
Well, I don't know that it's worded that way.
Yeah, it's
because denial of accreditation is.
But that's what it would mean, right? You're not allowed to.
But denial of accreditation is the program isn't accredited without the program sponsor.
Right.
Programs aren't accredited. Program sponsors are.
Right. So the institution itself.
So it's the institution. So it's not the same wording, but it is actually on page 10.
Thank you.
There's a section, right? Was that what you were looking at, Cheryl? The stipulations requiring closure of an individual.
Oh, thank
program?
you. That's it.
And
yes.
It's actually more, it's beefed up a little more than I remembered, and probably because of the conversation with her previous CTC chair.
I don't mean to put a pause in the conversation, but yet I do.
Sure.
Because we do have a 9:30 time certain. So the conversation here is really, really fruitful. I'd like to come back to this later in the day.
Sure.
So to keep the conversation going, we just put slightly on pause. Thanks. I appreciate that. So we're going to move on to item 26. We do have some people who are waiting, and this is the report of the accreditation team, the New Haven Unified School District. Consultant Hart Boyd, who I have to say is a lot taller than I thought you'd be. My goodness. Yeah. Well, at least on Zoom, we didn't see just that part of you. He's joined by team lead Hans Koffold and institutional representatives Sherry Bettafield, coordinator of personnel and induction director, Kathleen Hampton, induction specialist, and Jody Schwartzfarb, induction specialist. Does anyone need to accuse himself? I see none. Mr. Boyd, will you please begin?
Yes, thank you. New Haven Unified School District site visit took place from March 21st through the 22nd, 2022. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the site visit was conducted virtually rather than in person. A total of 109 interviews were conducted with various stakeholders, and the site visit proceeded in accordance with all normal accreditation protocols. Everyone at New Haven USD was great to work with, especially the leadership team, who were extremely thorough and thoughtful in their preparation for the site visit. Joining us today via technology and representing New Haven USD is the leadership team consisting of Sherry Benefield, Coordinator of Personnel and Induction Director, Kathleen Hampton, Induction Specialist at the elementary level, Jody Schwartzfarb, Induction Specialist at the secondary level. Also joining us today is the site visit team lead, Hans Koffold, Induction Specialist at Riverside Unified School District. Hans was fantastic to work with and was a very knowledgeable and thoughtful leader throughout the process. I would also like to thank each of the members of our site visit team for contributing their time and expertise to this visit. The team worked diligently in preparation for the visit and worked extremely hard during the visit. I'll now stop and turn it over to Hans, who will present the findings in the team's accreditation recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Koppel, can you hear us?
Yes, I was having issues unmuting, but I'm I'm good now. Good morning, Hans Koffold, Induction Specialist with Riverside Unified School District and the team lead on the site accreditation for New Haven Induction Program. So not unlike Hart, I'd like to start with a few thank yous for people that made the visit possible, and would like to speak briefly about the team that I worked closely with and acknowledge their professionalism, expertise, and most of all, thoughtfulness throughout the process. Our program reviewer, Denise Duell from Turlock Unified School District, and our Common Standards reviewer, Renee Rubio from Lancaster School District. Excuse me, what was great is that they also participated in the initial, the initial reading, and then also as part of the team. So in addition, the expertise of Hart Boyd, our CTC consultant assigned to the site visit, provided the team the precise amount of guidance and assurance required to hold the accreditation process to the highest standard. And then finally, thank you to the program leaders of the New Haven Induction Program and their diligence in providing the team access to documents virtually through a well-organized and thorough platform that allowed the team to validate the assertions cited in the program summary and common standards. The team did want to recognize the effort required to ensure stakeholders' participation in the site visit during this continued unprecedented time. So although we were switching to like a hybrid and some in-person, we did want to recognize the time and effort it takes to coordinate that. To begin with, communication, preparation, adaptability, and respect for the process overcame potential obstacles presented by the inability to have the in-person visit. This was accomplished through updates to the website and providing the team with a brief yet very thorough contextual presentation prior to the visit. In addition, it's just interesting to reflect that after 2 years of virtual and hybrid meeting, how skilled and comfortable we've all become in this virtual communication. A highlight of the site visit was the opportunity to interview many of the stakeholders. The authenticity and thoughtfulness of the participants in each interview group provided insight and clarity to the documents being reviewed. And by the end of the first day, a trend emerged. The program works to provide a wraparound approach to mentoring and support that includes the coordination of site, district, and individual goals as often as possible, and one that was echoed by completers as well as participating teachers. Examples of deep coaching occurred that supported their ILP goals and focus areas. This trend became even more transparent by the end of the visit. It's evident that the program seamlessly designs opportunities for candidates to receive support and advice in a variety of ways that are embedded in the context of their teaching, customized professional development opportunities aligned with the individual learning plan, and opportunities to observe veteran teachers when possible. So, in conclusion, thank you for allowing me to share a few trends and highlights the team identified that may not have been as evident in the report alone. And at this time, I would like to share the findings and recommendation of the team. For program standards, all program standards for New Haven induction program were found to be met. All common standards for New Haven induction program were found to be met. And the overall recommendation, based on the fact that the team found all the standards for the teacher induction program were met and that all common standards were met, the team recommends accreditation. And at this time, I would like to welcome any questions from the Committee on Accreditation members regarding the visit.
Thank you, Mr. Caulfield. At this point, we want to invite institutional representatives to provide any comment about the visit. We remind you it's not the time to dispute the team report, but rather provide any thoughts that you have about the visit itself.
Thank you so much. I'm Sherry Benefield, and I just wanted to thank everybody for a really successful experience on our end also. The team that came in was professional and just really gave us a lot of guidance along the way and a lot of great feedback. So on behalf of New Haven, we just really appreciate the process and are happy with the results. So thank you for giving us this time. I don't know if Jody and Kathy, would you like to comment also?
I'd like to echo Sherry's words and I'd like to begin by thanking, though they're not here, all the people on the New Haven side, all of our stakeholder groups who attended the interviews and participated. And I do want to recognize Kathy Hampton for her work with the platform and the technology aspects. The three of us have different strengths, and that is definitely Kathy's leading strength amongst the three of us. So we couldn't have done this without her technology knowledge. And thank you to Hans and the team and to Hart. It was great to work with them. The communication was open and flowed freely, which I think is the foundation of any successful site visit. And so thank you to everyone. As Sherry said, we are happy with the results.
Thank you. This is now an opportunity for committee members to offer any comments or questions that you may have. Member Tchaikovsky.
Well, congratulations on the adventure. And I just wanted to commend you on being creative in terms of how you are setting up your new teachers to experience both the long-term kind of organizational planning that they need to succeed and also that just-in-time support that they require by providing them with these two different roles of mentors. I thought that was kind of a cool thing. You've got these consulting teachers and partner teachers. That is a reflection of your, I think, attending to what candidates are telling you they need, right? I mean, a full-time mentor on his or her own isn't going to be able to do everything for people. Neither would somebody who's teaching the same subject at the school site, but between the two of them, your new teachers really have this very multifaceted model of mentoring, and I think that's cool. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Tchaikovsky. Anyone else wish to offer comment or question? Okay, seeing none, this is an action item. Is there a motion? Member Balotello.
I move that we accept this report and accept the recommendation of accreditation for New Haven Unified School District.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Member Lee. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations for the outstanding work and for the acceptance of the report. And thank you for taking the time. I know some of you had to step out of the classroom to do this, so thank you. We'll let you get back to your kids, which is what we all do, right? So thanks for being here. We appreciate it. So thank you, Ms. Benefield, Ms. Hampton, Ms. Schwartzfab, Mr. Kaufman, and Mr. Boyd. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We have a 10 o'clock time certain. William, are they here? And if not, we can go back to the other. Thanks, Hart. I was going to say, hey, Hart. I'm sorry. No, this is not a formal. How tall are you? 6'5". Goodness gracious. I know it's because don't hit your head. Man, I wish I was that tall.
Yeah.
I wish.
No, I couldn't follow him like you. No.
All right. Mr. Hattrick, are we good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're item 27 is report of actions taken to remove stipulations from Pacific Union College. Consultant William Hattrick will introduce the item, and joining him is institutional representative Dr. Gene Buller. Does anyone need to recuse himself? Seeing none, Mr. Hattrick, will you please begin?
All right. Good morning, committee members. Item 27 is an action item to remove the stipulations for Pacific Union College and change their status from accreditation with stipulations to accreditation. PUC's accreditation site visit took place April 19th through 21st, 2021. At the May 2021 meeting, the COA determined that the institution be granted accreditation with stipulations. A 6-month report was provided to you in October, and that's also linked in your agenda item. After a full review of the information and evidence provided to staff, it has been determined that PUC made sufficient progress on each of the 6 stipulations to have each of the corresponding standards now be fully met. The actions taken and evidence are summarized in the item. 2020 to 2021 academic year was especially challenging for Pacific Union College due to wildfires, campus closures, evacuations, and lack of internet availability for a number of months on campus and the surrounding areas. But despite this, PUC has made progress in responding to the stipulations and improving their program. Dr. Gene Buller is joining us today. Should you have any additional questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hattrick. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Buller.
You're
Any
welcome.
questions or comments? Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee members? Member Tchaikovsky.
I just appreciated the, excuse me, the quality evidence hyperlinked really helped to address the narrative regarding how the stipulations were addressed. So thank you for that. Good stuff.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other committee member have any comment or question? All right, seeing none, it seems fairly straightforward. Is there a motion? Oh, Mr. Lee, I'm sorry. Member Lee, did you have a comment? Okay. Member Balateo.
Just going to go ahead and make a motion. I recommend that we accept the staff's recommendation to remove the stipulations and change PUC's accreditation status from accreditation with stipulations to accreditation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Member Hillis. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. And thank you again for doing the work to remove the stipulations. We view this as a process of constant and ongoing improvement, and for all of us in our own professions and with this process here. So again, congratulations for a job well done. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. We feel very pleased that we were able to grow and improve our quality. Thank you. And William has been wonderful to work with. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Willow. Have a great day.
Thank you.
William, I don't imagine that we have the 10:15 here.
We're checking.
Okay. Well, we could go back to where we were on item 25. I think we have a really good discussion. I don't want to shortchange that. Okay, so we're back to what we were talking about, chapter 8 on the handbook.
And you had just raised, Cheryl, thank you for finding that on page 10, about the whole section on the closure of an individual program. So that's where we had left off.
And there's no way, yeah, I'm sort of embarrassed that I had not realized it was there on an entire page, right? I was so fixated on the tables. I was like, where is it in this? Yeah, I'm like a tables and charts kind of person. But I guess it just the idea of being able to provide differential feedback according to the various programs, is something that, I mean, this isn't really even about feedback. This is just about accreditation, sort of like status of things. So, I mean, it'd be pretty serious to close a program. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear there. Do you think there's, I mean, I guess I would wonder if there's too much language in that given section, given your intent to turn this into regulations. It seems like a lot of what's in there is kind of operationally helpful, but you might not want to convert all of that to law.
That's a good
You know what I mean?
point. Yep.
Right. It might be more germane to the BIR materials and to the team lead handbook, that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, I always unfortunately think about, who would sue us. And of course, if we're closing a program, that it could be, a potential area of litigation. So yes, I think that's good advice to really think this through and figure out where it fits in either in training materials or is it in the handbook. That's
or both.
Good suggestion.
Jason?
Yeah, that was going to be my comment exactly. I mean, as soon as you codify something, it removes any flexibility. So I think it would be to be purposeful in that and say these are the important segments to become law, and then the other pieces are part of support materials that give the visiting teams and the commission the ability to understand the local context of programs and provide them the direction they need to improve to serve their candidates.
That makes sense.
I have a question. So it's a couple of years ago now, but while I was on the committee, we did vote to deny accreditation to an institution, and they appealed it and went to the commission, and essentially our decision was overturned. And I forget the details of this, but I think that the gist of their argument was that we were not following what was laid out in the handbook, and that's why we were making the wrong decision. And so, was that what we weren't following? Has that been addressed, and are we fixing that so we don't do it again?
In that particular case, it went beyond the handbook and ended up being about what was in statute. And in fact, statute has been statute has been clarified. In fact, it was just clarified last year to make sure that we understood what kinds of institutions could offer what kinds of programs, who can offer student teaching, who can offer intern, et cetera. So that's been clarified at this point.
Good to know.
Well, and that is the preconditions, right? And so I think that underscores the importance of carefully including maybe a little more clarity about the relationship of preconditions to the accreditation decision in this section of the handbook. Again, not wanting to box us in, but making sure that we have the guardrails that we might need, and that's in that situation.
Well, and I'm thinking of our newest consultant that we met yesterday. This is good set theory kind of assignment for him, right? So we've got, there is a hierarchical relationship between statute and this document, right? I mean, one has a superior authority to the other. So, I think that's kind of should be made clear, because then I think our decision was based on this assumption that there was a higher directive than even these guidelines. So I think, yeah, it sounds like that it just had to be brought into alignment.
Any other comments or thoughts?
I have a question for you. On the chart on page 3, there's a row that we have never really used, and it raises questions of, I don't want to say legality, but it raises questions for me, and that is that let's say an institution has major stipulations, probationary stipulations. It's the third one from the bottom. Institution is prohibited from accepting new candidates, because I think you had this conversation years ago when we adopted this, but that once you prohibit an institution from accepting new candidates, you may also be affecting their ability to run the program, to clean up the program, to so that one is a really tricky one I think, and I don't know what to do about it. It has remained in this, but if you have any thoughts on that one, I think that would be helpful.
So administratively, their hands might be tied where they cannot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How do you fix something if
Mhm.
you can't operate the program. So
Katrina?
I don't know. I'm
Do
asking.
do we know that programs that have stipulations applied to them currently who are like in the process of delivering their quarterly reports, do we know that those programs are not accepting new candidates?
No, they are accepting new candidates in most cases. I mean, I don't know, but this would be something that the Committee on Accreditation would put in their stipulations.
Okay.
And so
As
we've
a-
never actually done that I know of.
Okay.
But it's always, we have?
We have before told a program, you can't admit any new candidates right now until you fix these problems because they're serious enough. We have done that.
I don't remember any times.
Okay.
We have told them not to submit new programs, but not admit new candidates to an existing program that I know of. I mean,
Well,
So now you have
we could. I mean, I'd love to look back and see what it is.
right. I would
Yeah,
have to
and
go
what was
back
the
to find out
situation.
where it was, but I feel like there was a time we were like, no new candidate, and it might have been Sonoma. It wasn't. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
I was going to say that, I mean, part of this discussion, and again, I'm the new person here, but there has been a lot of great discussions around program reviews. And I think if that situation arose, it wouldn't just be this without discussion decision made by the commission. I think that collectively we would look at what's the impact of that decision.
Yeah, true.
So I think there could be situations where things may be so egregious
Yeah.
that may be necessary. But I also think that collectively we would have an understanding of the context of the program, and if it led to, because different institutions run many programs, and some have large numbers and some have very small numbers, and some are multi-year programs.
Yeah.
So suddenly, if that decision was made and the program staff said, well, if you do that, you're going to kill the program, and this is something regionally we really need, even if it's only 5 participants coming through, and we will be committed to make sure we make the changes necessary to continue and update you quarterly as required.
So it sounds like you're advocating to leave it in the chart, and the COA would understand the context or dig into the context for what the implications would be for that decision.
Yeah, I think, nothing has shown me so far that this is what happens here. There's obviously a lot of rich discussion around supporting people and improving programs.
Mm-hmm.
And to that note, that's, I think, why it's an asterisk
Yeah.
as opposed to a check.
Yeah.
And the place where it is a check, and I remember this discussion quite vividly because my institution was up next for our accreditation site visit report when the previous institution was denied accreditation.
Yes. Right.
It was an institution with one program.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
That's the one I remember. I don't know, Aaron, perhaps I've forgotten some other ones, but and those kind of discussion, that was when we realized what my chair and I, what both authority but also thoughtfulness this group had, and the ways in which reasoned evidence was the basis, as well as understanding the local context of a program. I mean, that's pretty much what Member Lee just said as what popped out to us during that discussion. So
right.
I think I'm in favor personally of leaving the 2 asterisks because it is something we can do.
Okay.
But and if it's denial of accreditation, then obviously
Then of course
that's what
it
has
needs
to
to.
happen.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. That's very helpful feedback.
Anything else?
Well, I would just add to that too, though, that obviously we have limited time, we have limited information when we're like trying to read and be prepared as much as we study up on this stuff. So we rely on the team lead and the site visit team to really kind of be thinking through, obviously, this table as you do already, right? But like especially this one, if we're going to leave it in there, then, and if it's going to appear in the stipulations, then there should have been like a conversation at the exit meeting or something like, okay, you guys know there's some major problems with this thing, right? So what are we going to do? Do you feel like you can continue to offer this, or are we going to like put the brakes on it? That conversation I think needs to be had with the institution, I would think, before it shows up here in order for this to really serve this process of continuous improvement. I would hope as a COA member that had already occurred.
Yes, Member Chakowski, there are no surprises in this room. The institution has, we don't ever want that to happen. That would be horrifying and embarrassing for them and everyone else. Just to the rationale of telling a program it can't admit candidates, which without candidates, I'm not sure who mentioned it. If you don't have candidates, how do you solve the program? just a reminder that the institution, the COA can lift stipulations. You don't have to wait till they're all met. So, and I would imagine most institutions, if they've now been told you can't admit candidates to this program until you've solved the problem, I would imagine the institution might want to focus hard on that program. So it's possible they could come before you within 6 months, and having fixed that program, you can lift the stipulation and say, and now you may begin admitting candidates to that program again. So it's not as if it's for nevermore. Yeah.
Well, just because the memory is so vivid. I kept nudging my chair. Are you listening? This isn't good. But one of the things that popped out to me during that deliberation, and that became a subject of our conversation in the streamlining and strengthening committee, was that yes, it was very clear from the audience that the team had done its due diligence, right? The site visit team. However, due to a lot of institutional change within the institution, I wouldn't necessarily say that they saw it coming, because some of the same people were not the same people who were in the call, right? And so that was where we came up in the streamlining and strengthening conversations about the importance of the preconditions and doing those twice a year, because it was at that basic level kind of that some of these problems resided. And so, that actually was the basis of a lot of our discussions. When there's so much institutional change that the capacity to really mount an effective program becomes questionable, then it wasn't like they came here knowing, I don't think, honestly. But it wasn't because the groundwork hadn't been laid.
That was also the case in the one I can remember. The reason they didn't know is because the committee decided to go against the recommendations of the team. The team said to continue with accreditation, and the committee said no. And so the people in the room, they really were shocked, because they thought they were coming to have their accreditation granted. And it was only after we heard all the evidence that we decided no. So it is possible that they would be shocked on the day.
It is possible, certainly. I will just say this, and Gay is an excellent consultant. So and I'm sure she's listening, and I'm hang in there, Gay. Consultants are very clear with institutions, or should be, and I think they are very clear with institutions. When we do the report out, the team is going to recommend this to the Committee on Accreditation. Please know the committee could change our decision. They don't have to accept our recommendation. They could decide to go one way or the other. They could add stipulations. They can alter stipulations. So we do tell the institutions. So it could go differently. So if they're surprised, maybe that wasn't communicated as well as it could have been. But we do try to let them know. Yeah.
And I may look at that, the whole handbook chapters with that in mind, making sure that's really, really clear, that it's only a recommendation and that this is the body that makes the ultimate decision. Yeah.
Well, I might also suggest that that's the magic of this whole thing, right? I mean, there's very clear guidelines. This whole conversation is about making sure expectations are totally clear and transparent and public and defensible, right? Legally defensible. But at the same time, there is interpretation involved in everything. I mean, if we just wanted to hand teaching over to robots, that's one option. We could just hand this process over to some algorithm, and that would be the end, right? So I don't know. I think that this is all kind of healthy and worth having conversations about, because in making decisions, you clarify your values and your commitment to pursue certain ideals. And that's what makes California what it is, darn it. Yay. Fair
team. No, thanks, Adrienne. Thanks everybody for the conversation. Does this provide some guidance, Cheryl?
It absolutely does. And if you have any thoughts between now and June, please send them to us, and we'll try to get them incorporated.
That's great. Thanks, Erin and Cheryl. That's appreciate it. Oh, wait, let's take 5, because we have a presentation coming up at 10:15, right? Item 28. So I'm sorry. Okay. But take a look at the clock on the wall is different than the clock on your computers. So we're just going to say 5 minutes and we'll see you then. We're going to, all right, we're going to reconvene and get back to business on item 28. I'm sorry, not 20. Is it 28? Yeah, 28. It is 28. That's the discussion of third quarterly report from Las Virgenes Unified School District. Consultant William Hattrick will introduce the item, and joining him this morning is institutional representative Dr. Ryan Gleason. Does anyone need to recuse himself? We have one recusal, member Lee.
All right.
Mr. Hattrick?
Yes, and we also have my colleague Michelle Williams-George, who has been helping me tremendously on this. Provisional site visit and the follow-up actions is on Zoom. So, okay, agenda item 28 outlines the third quarterly report for the Las Virgenes Unified School District since their provisional site visit report was presented to you at the June 2021 COA meeting. At that time, the recommendation for LVUSD was accreditation with stipulations and to provide updates at quarterly intervals. Staff has reviewed the larger submission of information provided by the institution, including ongoing plans to address the stipulations and additional evidence links, which are summarized in the agenda item. Just so you know, we don't provide everything because it would be a lot for you to look at, but we've summarized the important parts that I think give the best picture of how they are addressing those stipulations. So again, I just want to thank Michelle, who's been working with me to analyze their evidence provided and offer guidance to the programs in helping them address these stipulations. So the final quarterly report is scheduled to be due next month and then presented to you at the end of June at your next regularly scheduled meeting. And staff continues to work with the program sponsor to address these stipulations. And we have Assistant Superintendent Ryan Gleason today joining us, should you have any additional questions.
Great, thanks, Mr. Hattrick. Any questions or comments from committee members? Dr. Gleason, you are with us. Would you like to offer any comment?
No specific comments, just appreciate continuing to engage in the process. It's been continually helpful to reflect with Mr. Hattrick, Ms. Williams-George on our growth and how each layer of our quarterly meetings help expand our work, create greater depth, and ultimately benefit the students we serve. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Gleason. Just coming back to the report itself. So we have, this is the third quarterly report, and any members have any questions as far as what is expected from this point forward? Anything you wish to see? Okay, seeing none, this is an action item. Is there a motion by committee member? Member Valentine.
I move that we accept Las Virgenes Unified School District's third quarterly report.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by member Forbes. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Dr. Gleason. Thank you for your good work. We look for the continuing reports. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And thank you all, as well, Mr. Hattrick. And is it Williams? Is Michelle Williams? Yeah, I thought so. Okay, I can see your face, but I can't quite read the name. But thank you again for joining us as well. Thank you. We are done for regular items. We have no more visitations before us at this point. So we move on to item 29, nomination of co-chairs. Administrator Cheryl Hickey will introduce this item. Ms. Hickey, please begin.
Yes, I'll be very brief. This is what we do every year at this time. So the procedures manual for the Committee on Accreditation calls for the nomination of the co-chairs to be done at the second to the last meeting of the year. So that's always, we go by fiscal or academic year, so June 30th. With nominations at the second to the last, with voting at the last. So we will nominate today, and we will vote at the next meeting. As you know, the strengths of the COA, one of the strengths is that we have two co-chairs, and we have organized yourselves that way so that we always have one representing the K-12 community and one representing the institutions of higher education community. So the co-chairs may serve 2 one-year terms according to our procedures manual. However, that's your decision as to if you wanted to continue someone beyond that, that you certainly can do that. That's just a matter of voting to override your procedures manual. So basically, I will open the nominations for each of those positions. And if you could nominate, the person has to agree. And maybe if they're not here, you between now and June, you will make sure that they are willing to serve. So any questions before I open? Okay. So why don't I open the nominations for the K-12 position, K-12 co-chair? Any nominations? Oh, Cheryl, I'm sorry.
I would like to nominate someone who's not here.
Okay.
Marty Martinez.
All right.
For a second term.
All right. We have a nomination for Marty Martinez, and we will check with him and make sure he's willing to. Yes. And Cheryl. Kathy. And a nomination of Katrina. All right. And are you willing to serve? Should you get the nomination? All right. Okay, so we have 2 nominees. 2 nominees. We have Marty Martinez and Katrina Chakowski. Any other nominees? Okay, so this is going to stay open through the next meeting and when we will close it and actually do the vote. So now the nominations for the representatives from the higher education community. Yes, Gerard.
I move that we waive the rules to allow the nomination of Bob for another term.
All right. So
Second.
All right. All right. So we have a nomination for Bob Frelly. That's true. Would you be willing to serve again? Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay, so that will stay open also through the next meeting when you.
For the record, Bob, I'd like to thank you and express my admiration for the skill that you bring, the presence that you bring to the role. It's a service, and you do it incredibly well, and I personally am very grateful.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, that's all we need for today. We don't need any action on this yet.
Thank you. So we move on to item 30. Item 30 is public comment. Any member of the public have anything it wishes to say? Please raise your hand in the Zoom feature, or we will wait for a moment to see if anyone wishes to indicate by chat in the chat feature. All right, seeing no public comment, we move on to the last item of the day, which is adjournment. And then before we do that, I want to thank you for a really productive meeting. You want to be overly sentimental. It's been great. Isn't it fun to see each other again and meet face to face? I think the work that we've accomplished in the last 2 days really speaks highly to just the quality of people we have in the room. It speaks to the depth and the quality of the preparation that all the staff does for us. And without that support and that work, it wouldn't be possible for what we do. And just the questions that you continually bring up to the institutions it speaks to your commitment. And we are all doing this for volunteer, and we all do it for the good of the cause because we believe of what we do in the state of California, for the students, for the teachers, for the institutions. So without you here, I don't think we would nearly have as much success with the progress that is going in the state of California. So just a big hats off and a really heartfelt thanks and commendation for everybody here in the room. So thank you all. And it was fun hanging with everybody last night. And I will say that in talking, this could be on the record, but just in talking with everybody, last night in learning about everybody's background. Everybody has something unique that you probably didn't know about. And if we had time, maybe we'll do this next meeting. Just go around the room and let everybody say at least one thing that you may not know about. Because yeah, right, exactly. There you go. I really do believe it's that perspective. You bring so many different wealth, and not just in the educational world, but just outside of your life experiences and other professions that I think serve you well in this profession and serve us all well. So I thought that was, for me, it was really enlightening, plus a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, being in person has been much better, obviously, for multiple reasons, but I really appreciate the kind of the level of accountability that everyone holds themselves to make sure they're doing a great job for the commission. So I'm learning and I'm really enjoying it. And I went into this hoping that this would be really great, professional development for myself. So I went into it selfishly, but it really then translates to what I can do for my program and the other people I work with. And we just needed someone who plays strings and drums, and we'll have a band, right, Bob?
Yeah, so that's right. That's right. We went around the room. We have a couple of trumpets, we got a trombone, we got a couple of horns, we got everything here. So we need to ask the CTC staff and everybody working. So we figured in June, everybody bring your horn or bring your instrument. Yes, there you go. That's right. We're in need of. Anyways, all right. Well, thank you.
I want to thank Michelle and Cheyenne over there at the
Yep.
media center over there. They were running the cameras as well as the chat, as well as the, all of that. So, I mean, really, thank you.
Yeah, and it was great. I mean, Michelle was always looking over me, like when I say recusal, she's like, "Are there any?" I mean, so we're always making eye contact. So yeah, over there, both of you are great. Thank you so much. Well, having no further business, I adjourn the meeting, the May 22 meeting of the Committee on Accreditation. The next meeting of the committee will be on June 29th, 30th, 2022, and we'll see you all then. Thank you.